So let's talk about that one thing you probably touch every single day. But if we're being honest, you maybe haven't cleaned in, what, years?
It's one of those things you just don't think about, right? We're talking about your keys.
Exactly. And it's actually a fascinating subject when you step back. I mean, keys are like these enduring artifacts of our lives. They travel from the sanctuary of our homes out into the chaos of the world and right back again.
Right, they're symbols of safety and access. But they also carry this entire biological history that we rarely acknowledge.
And that's what we want to do today. Just have a calm exploration of this everyday object. We're stripping away the anxiety about germs and replacing it with a grounded understanding of how we interact with the tools we hold most dear.
Exactly. It's about being aware, but staying steady. I love that approach.
You know, it's really helpful to think of our keys as more than just tools. They're almost like a functional extension of our own hands.
Right, and that's such a grounded way to look at it. Because just like our hands, those keys are hitting every door handle and elevator button right along with us. They're often our very first point of contact with the outside world.
Exactly. And every time you reach for them, you're transferring this distinct biological signature, your skin cells, natural oils, even just the warmth of your pocket. Over the years, a key doesn't just unlock a door. It becomes this durable, metallic record of everywhere you've been.
It's one of those things you just don't think about, especially since they almost never see a drop of soap or water. But it's okay. It's just one of those hidden parts of our daily lives that we're finally starting to understand a bit better.
If you were to take a standard house key and put it under a powerful microscope, that smooth metal we're used to feeling, it just disappears. It transforms into this incredibly rugged landscape.
Right. I'm picturing it almost like a series of hidden canyons and jagged mountains.
Precisely. And all those deep grooves and microabrasions from the cutting process, they aren't just there to open the lock. Biologically speaking, they're perfect little sanctuaries.
It's one of those things you just don't think about, but those valleys actually shield microscopic life from the friction of your pocket or even the air. It gives bacteria a safe place to settle.
Exactly. It allows them to stay on the surface much longer than they ever could on something perfectly smooth, like a glass screen. It's a tiny, resilient ecosystem right in your pocket. You know, I was looking into this question about whether metals, like brass or copper, can actually, clean themselves. It sounds almost like a myth, doesn't it?
It really does, but it's actually a fascinating scientific truth called the oligodynamic effect. Basically, the ions in high copper alloys can physically disrupt bacterial cells over a few hours.
Exactly. So those old-fashioned skeleton keys were actually working for you. They were somewhat self-sanitizing. But the catch, and it's one of those things you just don't think about, is that most of our keys today are plated in nickel or plastic.
Right. Those modern fobs and stainless steel copies just don't have that same natural defense. They're much more hospitable to our microscopic guests than those older alloys were. It's just good to keep in mind.
Let's talk about the glue that really holds this whole microscopic ecosystem together, sebum.
Right, which is basically just that natural oil our skin produces to keep us protected, isn't it?
Exactly. But it's incredibly mobile. Think about how often you touch your face or run a hand through your hair. Your fingertips are constantly picking up those oils. Then you grab your car keys or touch a door handle, and you're depositing this microscopic layer of sticky lipids right onto the metal.
It's one of those things you just don't think about, but that layer acts like a tiny trap for dust and pollen. It builds up into this nutrient-rich biofilm where bacteria can actually tuck in and stay secure, even with all the friction of daily use.
You know, it's fascinating when you actually stop to track where our keys go. It's one of those little daily journeys we just totally take for granted.
It really is. I mean, think about a typical morning. You lock the door, hop in the car, and toss your keys into the cup holder, right into that spot where crumbs and moisture tend to settle.
Right, and then you're at the coffee shop, and without even thinking, those keys go straight onto the table, maybe right next to your drink.
Exactly.
on a surface that's seen hundreds of other people that morning. It's just that one casual placement, but it's really where that first big exchange of microbes happens. It's just something we don't usually see.
You know, it's that split second we've all experienced. You're juggling a heavy bag or your coffee, and suddenly your keys hit the pavement. Or maybe it's the floor of a public restroom or the mat at the gym.
Oh, absolutely. And the instinct is almost always the same, right? You just reach down, grab them, and slide them right back into your pocket or bag. It's a reflex.
Exactly. And I think we do that because, well, they're metal. They feel solid, almost impervious. We don't really think of them as something that needs cleaning.
Right, but that brief moment on the ground is all it takes. They're basically picking up a hitchhiking load of bacteria and taxiing it directly into your personal space. It's just one of those little things we don't always consider in the moment.
You know, it's one of those things you just don't think about, but the inside of a gym bag is really its own unique little ecosystem.
Oh, I am definitely guilty of that. Just tossing my keys right in there with my gear without a second thought.
Right. And when you think about it, that environment is often warm, dark, and holding on to damp towels. If your keys have that thin layer of oils we mentioned, they basically act like a magnet for any bacteria or fungal spores thriving in the fabric.
Exactly. It's this silent transfer happening right while you're focusing on your health and fitness. It's just one of those hidden details in a busy day.
So let's talk about the pocket itself for a second. Biologically speaking, it's basically a little incubator. It's tucked right against your body heat, it's dark, and honestly, it's usually pretty humid in there.
It really is. And then you've got the lint, which is more than just fuzz. It's this mix of cotton fibers, paper residue, and even dead skin cells.
Right, exactly. And for any microbes hitching a ride on your keys, that's an absolute abundance of resources. It's one of those things you just don't think about, but when those keys sit in that warm environment for hours, the conditions are just surprisingly optimal.
It's true. They're essentially staying at body temperature, just incubating whatever they happen to pick up from the coffee shop table earlier that morning. It's a bit of a wake-up call, but it's good to be aware of.
You know, we don't often think about it, but our keys have changed so much. We've gone from simple metal to these bulky plastic fobs, and that actually has a real impact on what they're carrying around with them.
It's one of those things that's easy to overlook, right? But plastic is actually more porous than metal on a microscopic level. Over time, it develops these tiny microcracks that basically act as little reservoirs for germs.
Exactly. And the tricky part is, because they have electronics and batteries inside, most of us are, rightfully, a bit nervous to clean them. We're afraid of water damage, so the grime just builds up.
Right, it's that natural hesitation. And then you have those rubberized buttons on the car remotes. They're just magnets for oils and dirt. Because of that texture, a quick wipe usually isn't enough. It really takes a more deliberate effort to keep them clean.
So let's walk through that moment we all know, finally getting home after a long day. You unlock the front door, step inside, and there's that immediate sense of relief. But from a microbiology perspective, that's actually a pretty critical point for cross-contamination.
It really is. And it's one of those things you just don't think about in the moment. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of it. I usually just toss my keys right into a bowl or onto the entryway console the second I walk in.
Right, and that drop zone essentially becomes a major biological intersection. If you're placing your keys on the same surface where you might later put your mail or even your phone, you're basically creating a transit hub for bacteria. You're bringing the outside world onto your furniture, and often it's just settling there permanently.
Exactly. It's a small habit, but it's where those two worlds really meet.
You know, it's that feeling of relief when you finally get home. You lock the door, head straight to the sink, and give your hands a good scrub. It feels like the perfect way to reset, right?
Exactly. It's such a grounded habit. But there's this one little catch we all run into. You've just made your hands perfectly clean, and then you realize, Wait, my wallet is still in the car.
Right. So you reach for those same keys you just put down. And just like that, those clean hands are instantly recolonized by the microbial community living on the keychain. It's a total break in that chain of hygiene we work so hard to maintain.
It really is one of those things you just don't think about. We're so focused on washing our hands, but we rarely think to wash the objects our hands are actually holding. It's just about closing that loop.
So let's talk about that one habit almost all of us have, dropping our keys right on the kitchen counter the second we walk through the door.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that. It's usually that groceries in both hands scramble, right? You just need a surface, and the counter is right there.
Exactly. It's a completely natural thing to do, but when we look at it through a microbiology lens, it's actually a bit of a hidden bridge. Think about where those keys have been: gym floors, cafe tables, car ignitions.
It's one of those things you just don't think about. We're essentially taking the outside world and placing it exactly where we slice our bread or prep dinner.
Right, and that's the catch. By doing that, you're bypassing your home's natural immune system and creating a direct line from a public space right to your digestive system. It's a small adjustment, but a really important one for keeping your space safe. You know, we talk a lot about hygiene, but think about where your keys spend most of their time. For most of us, they're usually sitting right at the very bottom of our bags.
Right. And let's be honest, the bottom of a handbag is basically a little graveyard for everything from loose change to old crumbs. It's just one of those things you don't really think about.
Exactly. And those keys actually act as these little agitators. Every step you take, they're grinding against all that debris, essentially coating themselves in a year's worth of whatever has settled down there.
It's true. It's such a high contact zone, and they're just picking up that entire ecosystem. It really makes you realize how much we're carrying around with us without even knowing it.
You ever notice what people do when they're just waiting? Like at a bus stop or standing in line? They're almost always idling with their keys.
Oh, absolutely. Twirling them, rubbing the ridges. I've even seen people pop them in their mouth when their hands are full. It's one of those things you just don't think about.
Right, but that's the most direct route for contamination. And it's not just the mouth. We touch our faces hundreds of times a day without realizing it.
Exactly. So if those keys are acting as a reservoir for bacteria, every time you fidget with them and then brush your cheek, you're essentially painting your skin with that invisible microbial layer.
It sounds a bit intense, but it's really just about being mindful of that connection.
It really is. Just a small habit to be aware of.
So I have to ask, does the time of year really shift the stakes here? I mean, are we looking at a different ball game once flu season hits?
It really does. In those colder months, viruses like the flu or RSV are just much hardier. They can survive a lot longer on hard surfaces, especially things like metal and plastic.
Right. And keys are usually these cold objects. They aren't exactly killing off germs with heat.
Exactly. It's one of those things you just don't think about. You might shake someone's hand or touch a door handle, then use your keys. And even if you go wash your hands perfectly right after, the virus is still sitting there on your key fob.
Yeah, so you're essentially reinfecting yourself a day or two later. It's a vector you wouldn't even suspect. We've been talking a lot about the microscopic side of things today, but I want to take a beat here and just stay grounded. This really isn't about fear.
I appreciate you saying that. It's one of those things where it's so easy to feel a bit overwhelmed once you start looking at the data.
Right. But the reality is that we coexist with these microbes every single day. I mean, 99% of them are completely harmless. The goal here isn't to live in a sterile bubble. It's just about a little bit of awareness.
Exactly. It's like how we wash our dishes or our favorite clothes. Our everyday carry items, the things we touch constantly, they just deserve that same baseline level of care.
Precisely. It's about reducing the load on our immune systems, not trying to eliminate nature. It's really just a simple practice of respect for the tools we use every day. So, before we even grab the disinfectant, we really need to take a hard look at what's actually hanging on our key rings.
Right. It's one of those things you just don't think about, But decluttering is actually the first real step to hygiene here.
Exactly. We carry around keys for houses we don't live anymore or old loyalty cards, and all that extra surface area, the charms, the fobs, it just gives bacteria more places to colonize.
It's so true. A simplified key ring is obviously lighter in your pocket, but it's also much easier to keep clean. You're basically eliminating those little nooks and crannies where dirt likes to hide. It makes the whole habit feel a lot more manageable.
So let's move into the practical side of this, because cleaning your keys is, well, it's surprisingly simple, almost therapeutic in a way.
Right. And I think the first instinct for a lot of people is to reach for the heavy hitters. Like, do we need the harsh chemicals, the bleach?
Exactly. But you actually want to avoid bleach. It can really corrode the metal over time. All you truly need is a bowl of warm water and some mild dish soap. It's actually incredibly effective at breaking down those oils we've been talking about.
It's one of those things you just don't think about. And you just use an old toothbrush, right? It makes the whole process feel very gentle.
Exactly. I like to think of it as setting up a little station at your kitchen table. If you treat it like a jewelry cleaning session, it becomes this quiet moment to just slow down and, really tend to the things you carry with you every day. So, the first thing you want to do, and this is important, is set aside those electronic fobs. We'll handle those a bit differently. For your standard metal keys, you're just going to let them sink into a bowl of warm, soapy water.
Right. It's one of those things you just don't think about in your daily routine. How long should they actually stay in there?
Honestly, just 5 to 10 minutes. You're giving that warmth and soap time to really get into the grooves and break down that sticky biofilm. Basically all the oils and lint that have hitched a ride for years.
Exactly. And it's actually really grounding to watch that water turn a little cloudy. You're seeing all that hidden dust finally lifting away.
It really is. It's incredibly satisfying to just step back and let the water do the heavy lifting for you. After the soak, you'll want to take a toothbrush and just gently work it into the surface of each key. Really focus on the valleys between the teeth there.
It's one of those things you just don't think about, but I imagine those bristles are what actually get into the spots a cloth would miss.
Exactly. A cloth usually just glides right over those tiny microabrasions, but the bristles can actually reach them. You aren't trying to sand the metal down or anything. You're just mechanically disrupting the bacteria. It takes about 10 seconds per key, and honestly, it's a very mindful, repetitive motion.
It's a very grounded way to handle the chore.
It really is. You're quite literally clearing away the biological history of your entire past year from that metal. So, moving on to car fobs, because let's be honest, we can't exactly dunk those in a bucket of soapy water.
Right, definitely not. It's one of those things you use every single day, but you just don't think about how much they actually pick up.
Exactly. For electronics like these, we really lean on that combination of friction and 70% isopropyl alcohol. You just want to give the surface a firm wipe. The alcohol handles the microscopic side, breaking down the lipid shells of germs, while the cloth physically lifts away the dirt.
It's so reassuring to know that it's that simple. And it's really about those little seams, isn't it?
It is. I always suggest grabbing a wooden toothpick to gently clear out the grime where the plastic joins. Honestly, it's a bit eye-opening what can hide in those tiny crevices. So, once those keys are rinsed and the fobs are wiped down, we get to the part people usually rush through, and that's the drying.
Right. And I'm guessing that's not just to stop the metal from rusting.
Exactly. I mean, rust is a factor, but from a microbiology standpoint, bacteria just love moisture. If you toss a damp key back into a dark pocket or a bag, you're basically just restarting that incubator we talked about.
It's one of those things you just don't think about, right? So just lay them out on a clean towel and give them a good, thorough pat down.
Exactly. And if you can, let them sit in the sunlight for a few minutes. That UV light is actually a great natural sanitizer, and it ensures everything is bone dry before it goes back into your daily rotation. It's interesting. We're usually so focused on the keys themselves, but we completely overlook the lanyard or that fabric keychain.
Oh, definitely. It's one of those things you just don't think about. But fabric actually holds on to so much more. It absorbs sweat and oils deep into those fibers.
Exactly. It's much harder to get clean than metal. If it's fabric, honestly, just toss it in the washing machine with your laundry. Or if it's leather, a gentle wipe with a leather cleaner works perfectly.
Right, because those soft materials are usually the real source of any odors. Cleaning the metal but leaving the lanyard, it kind of defeats the whole point of the hygiene ritual, doesn't it?
So, the big question, is this something we need to be doing every single day?
Right. And it's actually really grounding to hear that we don't. A monthly spa day for your keys is really all you need for general maintenance.
Exactly. It's about making it sustainable. Maybe you link it to another habit, like cleaning them whenever you wash the car. It keeps the bacterial load low without it becoming an obsession.
Exactly. Of course, if you drop them in a puddle or on a public floor, give them a quick scrub immediately. But otherwise, we're aiming for manageable hygiene, not perfection.
You know, we don't often think about it, but there's this real psychological shift that happens when you're holding a truly clean set of keys.
It's true. It's a tactile thing, right? The metal feels smoother, less, sticky. It just feels different in your hand.
Exactly. It's like this tiny, subtle victory over the chaos of our environment. When an object you carry everywhere is actually cared for, it creates this ripple effect.
Right. It makes you more mindful. You stop just tossing them on the kitchen counter because suddenly you want to preserve that sense of order. It's a small way to stay grounded.
You know, when we talk about preventing that buildup from returning, it really comes down to being intentional with where the keys live the moment you walk through the door.
Right. It's one of those things you just don't think about. But creating a designated spot, like a small dish or even just a hook right by the entrance, is a total game changer.
Exactly. And the key is making sure it's only for keys. You want to avoid mixing them with loose change or old receipts. If you use a hook, you're actually suspending them in the air, which minimizes surface contact and keeps them dry.
It's such a simple, steady shift in the routine. It basically stops their cross-contamination journey right at the threshold, keeping the outside world limited to that one specific spot.
You know, another thing we can do is just practice a little mindful handling. Like when you're out at a cafe, maybe try to keep your keys in your pocket or bag rather than tossing them right on the table.
Honestly, that is such a hard habit to break. I'll admit, I love that satisfying clatter of just dropping them down when I sit. It feels like I'm here.
Right? It's a total sensory thing. But if you can keep them tucked away, you're really helping to break that chain of transmission. And here's a big one. Try to wash your hands after you've locked the door and come inside. If you treat locking the door as your final outside act, then that hand wash becomes your first real step of being inside.
Exactly. It's just about creating that little boundary for yourself. It's one of those things you just don't think about, but it makes such a difference. I love that. Such a small, everyday object can teach us so much about our environment. It's one of those things you just don't think about, right?
Exactly. It's like our keys are this tiny microcosm of how we interact with the world. By paying attention to them, we're just becoming more attuned to those invisible flows, the bacteria, the dust, the oils. It's not about being scared. It's about navigating life with a bit more intelligence and grace. Taking care of the small things is really just a way of taking care of ourselves. I really hope this look into the invisible world on our keys felt more, grounding than stressful. It's a good reminder that hygiene doesn't have to be this cold, clinical chore. It can just be a gentle, quiet part of your daily rhythm.
Exactly. And honestly, I'm looking at my own keychain right now and thinking it's definitely time for a soak. It actually feels like a nice little fresh start for the week.
It really does. So we'd love to hear from you. Is this one of those things you've just never thought about? Or are you heading to the sink to clean your keys right now? Let us know.